Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojó ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are you two doing?
Doing good.
Awesome. And we are, of course, back for another discussion of Ashes of Creation as things continue to ramp up. A couple of dev topics to kind of talk about. I'm in my head trying to think of it if there was anything big that sort of dropped. I don't think so in the last 2 weeks. The next stream's coming up, but it has not happened yet. But we had been gone for so long. We have plenty to kind of go over. So, so thanks for joining. And as always, if you have questions, put them in chat. You know, we like to interact, so just let us know. The first thing we were going to get to, and the title of the episode isn't really a title, it's question mark, exclamation mark, which is breadcrumbs, quest breadcrumbs, sort of what does everyone enjoy, what's the expectation. It's actually been very interesting to read through the comments on the Ashes of Creation forums, because in many ways it's very different to another set of forums I read, which is Pantheon. And I think actually shows a very distinct group of people who are going to play these two games. But go ahead.
I first want to give the range of breadcrumbs and such, where one is obscure DOS era CRPG, Ultima, etc., where you get vague details about an individual somewhere who you need to talk to advance things. And you might need to do some interaction, activate something from your user interface, use a portrait next to them, whatever. You know, that's one. That's like absolutely nothing. 10 is Atlantica Online. It literally shows a shining golden path and auto walks you between NPCs for all quest content. All battles are optional, so you literally do not stop to fight. It is just your character walking the entire world, seeing the entire story of the game, engaging in, I believe, 0 battles whatsoever. And that's 10. I'm kind of looking for something more in the 5 to 6 range, where as you get close to people of note, of worth, there's some sort of indicator that lets you know, hey, there might be something important about this person or somebody in your proximity or some item in your proximity. And it isn't something where you can just, run into a dungeon and have your book out and scan around everywhere hoping that something's going to pop up. It would be more along the lines that you've, specifically activated something in some area that now gives you a cue or a trigger for some other certain thing to kind of give you some awareness. It might not necessarily say what it is, but it might give you, if you're in proximity for long enough, or I don't know, if you can actually sit and rest or something for a moment, maybe the ability to do something where you can tell what entry in your journal it may pertain to. Not here's the way to resolve this quest, but you have a journal entry, you talk to this person in this town, and they talked about, their brother who had gone missing and moved to this town. And so when you see that person's, brother in the other town, or someone who you might suspect to be, you would actually be able to maybe click something or have something occur that lets you know, hey, this person might pertain to that other quest. But not something that's giving you a path, not something where there's exclamation points. If you believe somebody might have a need, you see somebody that's been, doing a poor job at their work because their tools appear to be broken, you go over and talk to them, and then you get the quest. Oh, my tools are broken. If you could get me some new ones or find some way to repair it, that'd be great. That seems like a lot more natural, and I think a little bit more fair way to do it. At the same time, what that also means is it can't be a theme park. It has to be when somebody sees that person who needs the tools and talks to them. The next person who talks to them is like, yeah, so and so is, going to fetch me some tools. I handed them the broken ones to get repaired. So I'm just waiting here until they do that. And so it isn't something where everybody is doing the same content, everybody's doing the same quest. But I guess going back to the thoughts on how much to reveal with that, I like the idea of a journal that keeps an entry of things that have happened, and when you're in a proximity or you're on a path that might get you, somewhere where you're adjacent to the thing that you're looking for with it, that something might be able to give you some small indicator. Not that it's the item itself that has an indicator, but something in your interface that says, hey, you might want to search around this area a little bit more. I feel like that'd be a better way to go. And if you want to ignore it and just keep on smashing, go ahead. That's your right.
Yeah, I certainly would not want to see what you had described. I've played a lot of mobile MMOs, which I hate mobile MMOs, but
which thing that I described,
leading you literally from one point to another. There are certain things,
the Atlantica Online.
You accept the quest, and you can just turn on auto, and it walks you there. Obviously, I don't think that has any place within something like Ashes of Creation. My personal thought is, what does the NPC know that is giving me the quest? What that NPC knows, I should then know. So if they know, if they say, let me explain, Dig. So I want you to go find, the heart of some animal somewhere out in the country. If they know that, hey, it's over this direction, it's to the northeast, 5 miles that way, it's been seen that way, they should be able to communicate that to me. If it's something they would necessarily wouldn't know, the exact location, then I would not want to see that show up on a mini map or, specific location of things, unless it's known to the NPC. Maybe the NPC wants you to go back to his ancestral home and get something out of the drawer. Then they can give you more specific directions as to where they want you to go. But in general, I don't mind the idea of question marks over the heads of people. I can see where some people might not like that, but for me, it's eventually you're going to have websites that have all this information anyways. So what becomes easier.
Should everybody see the same question marks?
What do you mean?
Should all players see the same question marks over every NPC that may have a quest? Like, should every quest always be open to everyone, or should there be intersections that get in the way? Maybe it could be a race thing or the same religion or anything like that.
Yeah, and there won't be, right? That I think that's been said that between races, between religions, you're not all going to see the same quest. Between nodes, the nodes will level differently, so the quests will be different. Which kind of ruins my previous argument about websites, because if everything evolves differently.
I think websites is going to be tough.
You can get some idea and some information from websites and some best practices people have maybe found across servers, but I don't think by and large it's going to be like a good old data mined or like a Nintendo Power Guide where it's just all laid out and where everything's at. You'll get a general idea and some guidance, but you're not going to have things solved for you by looking on a website, as it should be.
My biggest thing, my response to that question was, whatever you decide is, allow players to turn it on and off. I think that would address, differences of detail that people want. Some people might want all those sorts of details and others might not. The easiest way to probably rectify that is just let you turn it off, and then you don't have to have that experience, which I don't think would be too difficult to do if it was all, part of a quest management system. But, we also don't know, I guess, if I don't think we know whether or not there'll be player-made add-ons or anything yet that would, again, allow quest tracking and things like that.
I'm pretty sure Steven is against add-ons, but
Yeah.
But when I think about, or what this question made me think about, is that when I play EQ and WoW, especially, not so much with Anarchy Online for some reason. I think because you could go generate your own quests. My problem with question marks and exclamation points is out leveling them, and then they disappear, and you've got nothing to do for a while, or very little. You have things that are giving you very little XP, maybe. Things are either too easy or too hard. What do you do with these NPCs when you've out-leveled them? Well, I think, and I'm interested to hear how you think about this a little bit more, Phantom, because you were against numbered leveling anyway. Right? You don't like levels, and levels are often associated with NPCs and what quests NPCs are giving out. But it seems to me that we've got different races, we've got different religions, we've got different nodes.
Even classes could have a different thing. If you're some sort of wizard, like, oh, I need you to magic this thing for me. I can't bang on it with my hammer. You know,
we
that
also have different node types and different buildings within the node types. And we also have, a lot of, we should be having a lot of player agency. I think one of the other things that kind of bugs me about, and it's not about the question marks and the exclamation points, the breadcrumbs, I think what I'm thinking of is, give me stuff that I want to do. I always want to have something that I can do that's giving me some form of progress. And I should be able to make some impact. So I think one of the things that really pisses me off about vanilla EverQuest is Fippy Darkpaw. How many times do you kill him and he always comes back? So the thing that I was looking forward to with EverQuest next, and I hope we have some devs from there that can do some pseudo story bricks, is give us evolving NPCs. Maybe when a node pops to the next stage, some of the quests that we fulfilled have, or not fulfilled, have changed those NPCs' lives, so they aren't just standing around looking exactly the same. They aren't in the same, maybe their houses or their stores have expanded along with the city. Whatever it is, the breadcrumbs that I'm looking forward to are things that I can make into a cake and then break down and make it into souffle. I don't know, something else. I want to be able to constantly be able to change the world. The whole point is we don't want another WoW or EverQuest.
Yeah, those games still exist and they are still going very well. So there's no need to recreate them. The idea of not everyone not seeing the same quest givers. I mean, that does kind of go into my idea of levels. The thing that drives me nuts as a measure of power being level 1, level 5, level 10. I hit level 10. Now I get a whole new series of quests. That whole linear path drives me kind of crazy. What?
You reminded me of horizontal progression. Is that the term that was used for EverQuest? Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing here. You mentioned, okay, well, maybe we didn't do something, or we did do something to affect an NPC's life, and now you have a whole new series of quests, a whole new series of awards that you can come to. Well, that suddenly takes it out of the idea of, hey, I gained 250,000 experience points. Now that means I gained another level, which means I get to talk to this NPC now. It's a whole different ballgame. It's very different way of approaching things, and that I think is, to me, the perfect living MMO world anyways. Because otherwise, over time, what happens over 15, 20 years, we have examples now of EverQuest, of World of Warcraft, that as the levels increase, one lower level content doesn't really have any meaning anymore. And, how do you actually keep scaling things with, from level 60 to level 120? I'm kind of going off topic here with Quest.
No, you're not. No, you're not. I mean, I think that's a part of it is, that's one of the issues that I find we have is with MMORPGs, for D&D, you're lucky if you get to level 10 before, 6 or 7 or 8 years passed and everybody's gone their separate ways. Getting to level 20 was, that almost never happens. And now we have 120 and people are like, why can't I get to 80, 90, 100? And it's like, well, that's not really what RPGs were. To get, hundreds of thousands of hit points.
Well, you see the end result. Now you have, the next World of Warcraft expansion. Well, their answer is, we're going to make your level 60 now. What does that actually solve? It's the same process.
Yeah,
it's the exact
Didn't
same
they already
process.
do that once?
No, I don't think so.
I thought they floored everybody's.
Well, no. Then they add on, you start leveling a weapon. So it's the same process, but instead of your character, it's your weapon, which then also doesn't carry over to the next expansion. And I could go on and on about my problems with that. But as far as quests and breadcrumbs, yes, I guess the initial question, should everyone see the same quests, be able to interact, the same question mark over their heads? No, I would hope that the world does not allow that to happen, based on a number of different things.
Well, it depends on what the individual NPC needs. They might need if they're a baker or a blacksmith, they might need a certain amount of stuff.
Well, and can we have a world where those NPCs' needs change?
But that's the key thing that I think has to happen, and we should be having that. That's part of the procedural generation.
Yeah,
I think that's part of
5 players before you already gave 10 eggs. She's got 50 eggs, doesn't need any more eggs. So, does your question then change? Which kind of ties into the second part of what we were going to talk about. But
even with that example, though, that's kind of funny. The baker is actually a perfect example of a flexible NPC. They will always have something that they have in need, and once they have it in excess, now they have everything else that they are in need of. So there will always be their lowest resource that they're putting out. Hey, I need more of this, and then once they're in excess, it's like, great, I've got cupcakes for everybody, fantastic. But now I've got like way too many eggs, and I need some more flour, I need some sugar, this and that and the other, some more oil. So it could still be that one NPC is giving gather quests of sorts, but there's 2 results to it. One is the fact that when they've got enough of the gather type, they switch to a different gather type. And the second is every time you hit the gather threshold, now they've produced a resource that is giving some sort of benefit, or you're getting it as a gift, or whatever that might drive for the community. They could even be getting better at the process too. So you could, the more you grind the cupcake vendor, the more the better their cupcakes get. Anyway, do you wanted to move on to a different subject? No, that's fine. You're muted to them?
Yeah, I kind of see that. Yeah, I was commenting on. Sorry, I was trying to type and talk at the same time. they're related. So NPC behavior and combat, I kind of see this, quest giving and everything else being sort of similar because it comes down to AI. But so we can talk about all of this. Actually, we don't have to necessarily stay in one lane because we were just talking about NPC behavior. We all started this show as EverQuest Next. So we started this, I think, 6 years ago at this point.
Yep.
And one of the draws to EverQuest Next was this idea of utility-based AI, which was Storybricks, which basically said NPCs' behavior would be driven based off their needs in the moment, basically. It's more complex than that, obviously, but their needs would change. Their behaviors would change based off their environment. It was basically things we just haven't seen within an MMORPG. And I don't think we've actually even seen it yet. Curious enough for that question to be asked for the dev discussion. I don't know that I've actually seen them comment specifics about AI either. So we could talk about all that. In my head, I did a huge article about utility-based AI, about the whole idea of the Holy Trinity, NPC fighting combat. The tank, the healer, and the DPS, and what does the NPC target first?
Keep going. You're going to make me interrupt you. Keep talking.
No, you can keep talking. I'm curious why I'm saying not yet, but
it was not yet. You asked if you hadn't seen that yet, and he's saying
that's
that from a dev perspective. But that has me thinking about them targeting the cool thing about Storybricks was that those NPCs were supposed to have different moods and different likes, and they have individuals like different races and dislike different races. If you steal something from them, that can change their effect. So it could be that some NPCs, or even a particular, sometimes it hates females and sometimes it hates elves. There's all kinds of stuff and changes of emotions and emotional states, all kinds of reasons that it could target somebody first. So that was the beauty of Storybricks, is that even an individual NPC would not react the same way to the same type of person or the same situation necessarily.
Yeah,
it's too complex to put in a game, but
well, yeah, and encounters where an NPC is able to determine, hey, my best chance at survival is not to keep hitting this tank with a shield. It's actually to target, either the healer in the back or the mage that, is just kicking my ass. And that was sort of the beauty of where this AI system that was theoretical, which we found out later was entirely theoretical, had not actually had any code put to place before EverQuest Next went under, but it's theoretically possible. Would really change.
Because there could be an NPC who normally goes after healers first, but I'm starting to forget names of classes at the moment, but you have the ranger come along and they just hate rangers more than anything else. So they go berserk when a ranger happens to be in the party, even though every other time they go after healers. And maybe your group, maybe you have a bunch of groups that think, oh yeah, this guy always goes after the healers, until that one time somebody brings a ranger or a ranger subclass and it goes nuts. Or a female ranger, it really goes nuts. My waifu.
I kind of feel like there's just a lot of stuff with NPCs in general, and giving them agency and giving them ability. One thing for combat, I'm hearing myself in one of your mics, by the way. One of the big things for combat for me that is, I have to turn my audio down. The idea that instead of a battle only ever being able to resolve in a be killed sort of situation, the idea of an actual real tactical retreat. Now, that's one of those things that a lot of times isn't possible in a theme park because the creature's bound to a specific area anyway, get it further than that, and it will just retreat back to its normal point. Or if it is something that's truly mobile and will, follow at any distance, it might not necessarily be a good idea to let it just keep on chasing, because that's how you end up getting kites and trains. It might get itself vulnerable. It might, want to stay closer to something specifically, maybe not just one static point. Might not want to be out in the open by itself and prefer to be near more of its allies. Things like that. On top of that, the idea that for an enemy to, instead of just picking fight to the death, or possibly having the agency to actually retreat and try to get help from allies, which you don't really see very much, being able to get you beaten down to a certain point and then use like a crowd control that they use to capture you, basically. The idea of seeing that they've got the upper edge in a fight, and instead of it just being a monster, you're fighting another sort of intelligent humanoid creature, and they're able to say, hey, I've got you beat down, give me some gold and I'll let you go. That sort of thing, that really doesn't come up. And I know that would be maybe a little clunky in an interface like this, and that's the one reason why I think it probably wouldn't be done. But I don't think that the design team isn't potentially able to come up with solutions that would be reasonable for something like that. Other sorts of things I had brought up in the actual dev discussion, something that I had seen in a D&D campaign a buddy had told me about many years ago, where instead of the kobolds fighting these level 10 people that are just going to destroy them, they all came in, stole one item, and then ran through these cracks in the walls where they couldn't be chased. So the idea of taking something from somebody and then retreating, that your goal isn't even to fight them, is simply to scavenge some resource they can take back to whatever culture they're from and try to barter it for something, or hold it as a trophy that they got over on those, stinky tall things that have been ruining their territory. Whatever it may be, I feel like there's a lot more room just in combat situations for how they even try to resolve it. And then even more detail, obviously, how they actually engage and conduct in the fight. If they feel like they're in a comfortable situation, that they've got backup coming, that they're not going to be outnumbered, outmatched, they might use different tactics and try to be more conservational of items they perhaps only get to use once a day. Like I think of, it wouldn't be in this game, for example, but a soldier in like a modern FPS, they've got their machine gun, but they've also got 3 grenades. And do they throw the 3 grenades in tactical situations? Do they do it for maximum effect when people are grouped up? Or do they lead into the fight throwing 3 grenades? And I feel like if they assume they're just going to die real fast, they're just going to start throwing the grenades. So that same sort of thing could be applied here, where there's limited use sort of things that the NPCs have that they're able to optionally use based on the desperation and how outnumbered they are in the situation. And it could be, if you catch them comfortable and catch them off guard and you take them out quickly, that's how you actually get to collect these items that they normally expend in combat. Maybe it's a rare crafting resource. Maybe there's some other use for it. So that's another sort of thing that I think would be really interesting, is just the idea of how much comfort and morale and how much intensity they're going to put into each and every fight based on their situation, based on you and your posse and everything that you've got.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that one part that you said a little bit earlier, and might have been about the gold thing, is that it would be nice, even if we can't get as robust as story bricks, if the NPCs had different interests other than just combat and killing, so that it's not even so much they want gold, it's that you stole their relic, and if you're like, hey, I'll give you the relic back if you'll leave me alone, you give the relic back and they're done, because they're not really out to kill people. They just want to protect their stuff, and you stole their stuff. And if you give their stuff back, they're like, we're cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Or thinking about D&D, since I was brought up as an example, or like tabletop games, the idea that if you, as like a couple players, came across a bunch of pirates, they might try to, conscript you. They might make you join them. They might be like, hey, we're gonna, you're gonna tell us about the area here and we won't kill you or whatever. Or they might try to give you some task, and if you actually complete it, then they do more for you or something. That's the sort of thing that I think, and knowing that if you do help them, it's going to kind of lead you down a path of lawlessness. So that's the sort of thing that I think we could also see more of, is when you come across a group who should have some sort of agency, that they actually express as if they've got some sort of agency, that they say, hey, look, we own the area. You think you're tough? Yeah, we're going to gang up and beat you up. Like, that's just what you're getting into here. You need to bring a lot more people, or if you've come here to join us, great, prove yourself, and then you can hang with us for a bit. I think that would actually be great. A player or two hanging with an NPC like sub-faction out in the world, and you're doing your pirate thing, and all of a sudden, oh crap, real players who really want to take these things out have come along. And then, where do you go from there? What decisions do you make?
And I guess another thing that kind of brings me back to Breadcrumbs, perhaps, is I don't know that we necessarily need question marks and exclamation points, but one of the things that I wanted more of as a druid playing in World of Warcraft is being able to heal more stuff. Like, there's got to be more sickened animals out there at some point, and I don't know that it needs to be a formal quest, but if I'm a druid, I should be out in the wilderness looking for that stuff, and if I happen to stumble upon it, be able to use my skills to make the land better, not just for combat. For me, because I'm a pacifist and I would play the Care Bear challenge. I'm sure I'll have at least one character trying that. I want to do other stuff class-wise than just kill stuff. And that one utility skill really isn't cutting it for me, but, take what we can get.
Yeah, when it comes to NPC sort of behavior and combat, the thing that I personally drives me nuts is all the shift to seeing, all the circles on the ground and telegraphing things that are going to be done with these sort of visuals, which I would be okay with if it was just the NPC doing something, so you could actually see the movement of an arm and know what was about to happen, versus big shiny lights showing you where to go, and then it becomes just sort of a cadence of timing and learning the order in which different moves will be performed. This is where, when it comes to combat with NPCs, I really wish we could get some sort of movement towards again, this whole utility-based sort of system, where I don't want to say random. I don't think combat should be random completely, right? I think that would probably drive people nuts. That would probably drive players away if you every time you fought a kobold, it did something different. That would, I think, be not a great path to take. But
how different?
Well, I think you learn groups, right? So you would learn, okay, kobolds have this range of things they're able to do, and within this, I know that they have, maybe they have a rogue group. They don't have, necromancers. So then you start to narrow down and learning what they're able to do, and somehow visually being able to see, okay, this specific NPC in front of me, appears to be a rogue or appears to be some sort of caster, just so that you can start to visually narrow down what to be prepared for. Again, I don't think randomness is the right way. I think if you just had entirely random encounters every single time, people would quit playing your game. Because you do have to be able to learn. I mean, that's part of playing, right? That's part of getting into the flow, which I've talked about before, is you do have to advance in your ability to overcome challenge. And so completely randomness won't let that happen. But I would just like to see more random encounters, maybe somehow different based off your group makeup. I don't know, some sort of intelligence.
I did propose something like that in one of the dev discussions, the idea that maybe there's 20 variations or different total abilities that a certain sort of creature would have, and the most basic grunt version would generally only have 3 of those 20. Maybe something tougher like an elite would have 5 of those 20, and like your warlord type or whatever might have 8 to 10 out of those 20. So the amount of variance that they have, it goes up based on what stature they are among that type of NPC or culture. But with that, the 3, obviously you would always need some sort of attack. Maybe it's a restriction that you always have 1 attack, you always have 1 defense, and you always have 1 like mobility or something like that. Something to help them escape, or something that helps them charge, or fall without taking damage, whatever it might be. That's the sort of thing I think could actually be reasonable and fair, because I don't know that the tactics would necessarily change too terribly much between the grunts, but it would at least have enough that you would have to kind of slightly learn them in the moment. You're not just walking in, mashing auto attack and waiting for the creature to die, or walking in and pressing all of your special abilities because it's actually going to sit there and like hold its shield up for the first 3 or something like that. I like the idea that there's a little bit more variance and a little bit more agency, but not necessarily so much that their interactions are completely different. It's just, maybe they have different attacks with different timings and different, anticipations and stuff. So you have to, know they might try to do the high to low attack. They might try to do the thrust. They might try to, take a quick step back and throw a dagger at you, whatever it might be. But it's something that maybe it has to be a little bit of learning experience. By the time you go from the beginning to the end of an entire like civilization-sized camp of this creature that you're clearing out, I would hope you would have learned enough of them that, when you get to the final challenges, the final boss thing isn't just laying combos on you, because you actually kind of have a feel for their patterns and abilities now.
So, one, I think, I don't think we should, but I like when games do include tells, because we don't have peripheral vision. So if there's action combat, I'm not always going to be facing toward an arm to be able to tell that an arm is coming towards my side. That's what the tells are for, is I can see, I need to jump out of the way because I can feel that. And that's part of the problem.
Members are for.
No, we do not have enough senses to adequately mimic what we would be doing in combat in real life. We'd be feeling all kinds of extra stuff that we can't notice on a screen. And that's why we need the tells, because they're giving us more information. But I'm hoping that as we go through these dungeons, we aren't always clearing dungeons. Maybe you lose and you have to come back in a couple of weeks because you're going to have to bone up. I think one of my problems is that we have this, from being the hero, we all think that if we go into the dungeon, we have to win and clear it. And that shouldn't necessarily be a thing. Maybe, you should get XP for doing part of it. You should, and the same thing with the rogue. If I don't want to clear the dungeon, maybe I just go in and unlock all the doors, and another group of people comes in and clears the dungeon, and I get XP for the stuff that I did. I hope we get stuff like that. I'm not sure that we will, but I don't think that detailed information Stephen is ready to talk about yet.
I guess in my mind, again, to not talk so much about randomness is also, okay, we have this name mob, and we know the spell variety that it has, but maybe this time we have 6 of our 8 party members are ranged, so we have to take into account the NPC is probably going to cast some sort of AE spell in order to get the ranged, versus if we had more majority of melee class, that sort of thing, where you actually have to start taking into account your group makeup, and the NPC is going to change based off of your group makeup. Not that it's just one day going to know a fireball spell that it didn't know the last 20 encounters, but not so much that, okay, we know, okay, it just grabbed the tank. That means in 5 seconds, everyone has to be prepared for the AE that's coming. That drives me nuts. I would just like to see more variance. I think it would be a much funner way to play. But of course, I'm also going to spend most of my Ashes of Creation time living on a farm if everything goes well. But
you're going to have little stray critters running in and trying to eat your stuff. Yeah, but again, as our nodes pop from town to city to metropolis, I hope that there are. I should mention this on air too. I hope that we have some relatively iconic characters that grow, NPCs that grow with us, and their combat grows with us. I mean, I would love to start off with the little scrappy kobold pup that is Fippy Darkpaw, and over the course of 2 or 3 or 4 years have him become the general of his pack. I mean, or the king, King Fippy. Let the NPCs grow and let them come up with let them learn just like we do. So they learn some new combat skills or crafting skills, or all of that, if it's possible.
Yeah, that would be great. It would be nice to be able to have that. But that brings me back to something that I brought up in one of the past couple episodes, which was the problem that the way it's slated now, it sounds like when a place gets taken over and it gets, change of ownership, everything just pops to new stuff. And that those people who existed before, either they just got a race swap to whoever owns the place now, or they're just poof gone from the world, even though they weren't killed in combat at all. And this is one of those sort of points, having a pool of characters who are constantly migrating. As they get kicked out of one area, they'll find their way in some other area. Maybe it's slow for them to set back up. Maybe that place just lost their blacksmith and forge and everything, and so you come in with a cartload of whatever you were able to take from the last place, and sure enough, set right back up and get all the resources and agency to do even bigger and better things than before. That's the sort of thing I'd really like to see as the areas rise and fall, as the ownership changes hands over and over and over again, the idea that the NPCs in the world do actually stay around. And if it gets to the point where one race is more dominant across the whole world than all the other ones, well, that just means they're going to have a much bigger pool, and everybody else's pools are probably going to be pretty static for a while because they don't need to increase the number of those folks at all. Some of them, I could see a few of the less developed ones temporarily poofing out of the world if there's just no territory anywhere for any of them to live. But as soon as that, room for that pool starts to open up again, that they start to appear again, I feel like that would definitely be a much better solution than, new owners, the elves who have been running this shop for the past 6 months are nowhere to be seen anymore. But now there's these new folks, and they have different stuff. They have a different style. It's sorry if you were using the old person stuff, but you don't have it anymore.
I'm going to jump in real quick just to say, when I mentioned iconic characters, one of the things I want to make sure that I do say on air is that I do wish that we could get iconic characters from each race to follow. And it would still be nice. I think they've done a fairly good job of representing diversity among the different races, but they could go farther so that we could have more representation even among the Vec, so that they don't all look Europeanized in terms of physical features. I probably would not mind having a Vec with the fro, or one of the Alar with the fro. Elves should be able to grow fros too. But it would be nice to get some iconic characters that we could, follow along in news articles. We haven't had a lot of new articles released on the website.
No, it's been more dev discussions, and then what they actually talk about on the streams. I feel like they're probably keeping things to the streams for a while until they have a major, potentially playable content drop that they're going to bring along. So I'm not too worried about it. They're keeping things moving. But you're right. There could definitely be more things to talk about or report about. I also don't know. I guess I'd have to look and see how things kind of changed with the pandemic and the remoteness. I wouldn't expect writing things would be too different, but maybe it was just one of the things that they decided to put less focus on for a little bit alongside all of that.
I mean, since we have Ombwa in chat, it just kind of knocks me in the noggin and jogs some ideas loose that I'd love to see some BR stories or stories from characters from the Battle Royale era, which is pre-leaving Vera. Have a couple of stories dropped.
Maybe they've done a couple of. I think it was Pathfinder's the system they used, but then a couple of live streams that was based on the lore. Maybe some of those characters will be that you run into. Who knows?
Or based. What's the? I'm forgetting the name of the 24-hour gaming day. Something
Extra Life. Extra Life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when they would. Yeah, they've done I think 2, and they were all. In my craziness, I've read through not the entire transcript, but parts of it. So, because it is, I was curious. It is because it is based in their lore.
Yeah.
This all kind of ties into also one of the questions we didn't get to from the last show that Stephen had done. I think on the Reddit AMA, there was a question about sort of how do you fix content drop off at the end of at the end of your at max level, how do you fix that? How do you keep people interested? And the point was, even World of Warcraft doesn't seem to do that. Everyone completes everything with the first couple of weeks, and then periodically they release new raids and people come back.
Because you can't change the world. And
Right.
so it is the end of content when you've hit level 60 and done all the instances and you've got your max raid gear and your PvP Grand Warlord or whatever. You're done. You've played it. It's static content. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry.
And it's interesting because what's been presented, what is often always talked about, is the answer to that is nodes and PvP and players changing the world. Yes, you get bored. You've killed the last world monster. Okay, now it's time to go take a metropolis down.
Or just build a new building.
Yeah, whatever your choice is, you get to change it. But we've actually spent a good portion of the night not talking about players and what they can do, but just what if you were able to upgrade how NPCs act. That also starts to address some of that. What do you do at max level content? Because if you start giving NPCs a little bit more brains, I think the word max level, or whatever you want to call it, starts to get a little bit harder to define. Maybe a dungeon you ran when you were level 20, now that you're level 50, the NPCs in there know that, and so they change how they come about, fighting you. So it's not just. I don't think it has to just be player-driven change. It can also be NPC-driven change, but that obviously is much harder because we've not seen a really perfected system in any MMORPG for that. And I'm beginning to think that the whole idea of utility-based AI is just a theory and one that will never be proven. But one day, maybe.
Yeah, it can be done on a smaller scale and be proven. It's just nobody's doing that.
But that also gets to my whole idea of leveling digs. That was part of that discussion too. The idea of what, the 1 through 49 doesn't mean anything anymore. It's what you do at 50. So why do you have 1 through 49? Is my whole point to that. So,
yeah, for sure.
We're getting towards the end. There was actually a question. There were two. Well, one was a much bigger question. Thoughts on the PvP system. That's probably a whole different show.
I got a quickie on that one. Well, it's not going to be what we saw in the Battle Royale, and it's going to be, from the sound of it, something just a little bit of a different combat system in general that we've seen from everywhere else. So how it's going to pertain to PvP, it's going to be a thing. There's going to be some amount of a balancing act for making PvP balanced and making PvE balanced, and in doing both of them, it could be that both of them end up being slightly compromised. But we don't actually have the PvP system in our hands right now to play and to test. And until we do, I'll just throw random little mini rants at it because there's not much to say.
Well, and for my part, when I'm a Care Bear, and I have typically, ever since Vanilla EverQuest first came out, have tried to join, what did they call the PvE ones? Wow, I haven't played in so long, I can't even remember the name of it. The sometimes PvP optional. I joined the PvP optional servers because my friends, and at the time it was Activision friends who got me started with EQ, they were like, yeah, play with us, we'll protect you. And then I never see them again. So I joined the server, and then there's no sportsmanship in MMORPGs. So PvPers will often say, if you're in a PvP zone, why are you here? If I can PvP you, then I should be able to kill you. I usually get driven to PvE only servers because in my experience, PvPers, there's too many assholes who force me into non-consensual PvP when I'm not in the mood. So I'm semi-hostile to having PvE and PvP all players all on one server, and I don't think it's going to work well. But we have to test. We don't know. Yeah, I would like to play with my PvP-loving friends like Neuro, but I don't think it's really going to work because PvPers want to be able to PvP whenever they want to. And when I'm not in the mood to PvP, I will rage quit the game and just stop playing. Because when I'm not in the mood to PvP, I'm really not in the mood to PvP. And there's other stuff I want to do without getting attacked. And I know, and this is the other thing just to stay on top of that, with NPCs and mobs, they're dumb enough that I know how to handle them and run away from them or stop them from doing the stuff that I don't want them to do when I don't want them to do it.
I'm not convinced, when it comes to the PvP, I mean, we were talking about this in chat, initially, yeah, there'll probably be this sort of, everyone would want to test the mechanics and, let's go take down this node, that node, see what it's like. I'm not convinced a year after release, people are still interested in doing that because in my experience, usually what the community will do is whatever's easiest for the community. So, if travel and getting around and getting things you need from one metropolis to the next is not overly difficult, then, what becomes the incentive to change a metropolis to something else?
Conquesting Zerg guilds. That's what it is.
Yeah,
You're going to always have your conquesting Zerg guilds from other games. They're going to come in 1,000 strong and just want to dominate everything.
Well, and that's why I say initially I could see that. A year later, I don't know.
I see it happening.
But there's also mechanic changes, right? It's not that they can just go Zerg. They actually have to do a quest line, and then there's a defined period of time. People get to prepare. So it's not just sort of a Zerg, right?
Well, while they're not actually taking places over, they're also going to be Zerging all of the dungeons and anything else nearby that they can throw, hundreds of people at that would normally have 5 or 10 to solve it in a couple hours, and still just take the area over. It's
possible. What I would like to see is if that actually would happen. A year from now, a year and a half. Well, a year after release, we don't know. I can't say from now, but I would love to see an instance. Okay, the developers realize this change isn't happening as much as we would like to see it happen, and so do we just turn it into a humongous monster invasion instead, and just affect change that way? We're already going to have monster coins, so I mean the whole process of being able to do that should be in place. Hopefully it is all driven by players. I'm still not entirely convinced, though, that
it should not be all driven from players. We should have world bosses and less than world bosses. We should have, major mobs, dragons, and such who have hordes who come and raid the cities. I mean, that should be a thing. They should be raiding us just like we go out and raid them.
Yeah. I don't know how that would translate. I guess, have they ever talked about the size that could happen within a metropolis? I know we've talked about, no second stage, third stage nodes, you dig too deep in something, but what actually would be so massive that it could attack a metropolis? I don't know that that's ever even been, we know world bosses exist, but that was always communicated in the context of a PvP or a PvE sort of, overworld somewhere way down over here, not attacking your metropolis. So that's my right now with PvP. I'm not a PvPer, but I'm also not convinced that in the long run happens. We'll see. The other thing that I hope...
I think they're going to be missing one of their major intersections.
Well, here's my other concern, and this is something that I've sort of realized with Crowfall, because I've been doing some with beta and Crowfall, and the server populations, the interaction is very small. Now, I could always have a skewed viewpoint. I could be on the wrong server. there's a lot of reasons I could be seeing few people, right? But my theory there is that, in the effort to be transparent, they have let people from alpha, pre-alpha, all the way up to beta be able to test and play and do all of these things, and that people just aren't interested now. Oh, it's beta. Okay, well, we've had a chance to do this now for 4 years now. It's literally been in a development cycle that's playable for 4 years. And so now when it comes time to actually, celebrate moving to beta, there's just the numbers aren't that high. So I don't think that would happen with Ashes of Creation, but I don't know. If we sit in an alpha state and a beta state for the next year and a half, do people lose their interest? They've already had that experience of going and taking down a metropolis. So now they don't want, what's the, we've done that. Who cares? I don't know. There was one other that I think I know we're kind of at the end of our time, but Diggs, I thought you would probably be interested because I think I already know your answer. Have you guys discussed the possibility of breeding animals and mounts for a nominal fee towards node progression? So have we discussed basically animal husbandry and progression of nodes?
We haven't. That's a whole show. I was the Charles Darwin of Wizard 101. So I figured out how to map the pet gnome of the pets and breed them for the skills and traits that you wanted. There's a whole website, the Pet Gnome Project, that is still active as new pets come out. And I coined the name Pet Gnome. So I'm looking forward to the animal husbandry and Ashes and seeing if maybe I need to do some magic to figure out how to breed the stuff that we want. But I think that's a whole show. That's a whole show.
Cool.
Yeah.
Or at least a half show.
Theater Elf already kind of beat me to it. My whole point of even kind of reading that out is, as far as we know, all of that should count towards node experience and node development. So, like I probably already mentioned multiple times this show, I don't intend to do PvP. I'll probably do PvE to a degree. I really want to just set up a freehold and sort of learn, the process of animal husbandry and farming. And so I would hope that, and it should, and we've been told it will contribute to that node's development. So, so it was just a lot of conversation and still a lot more to be had. So we are at the end of our time though. So we thank you everyone that has come out and joined and kind of chatted with us. If you're new to the show, we do this every other week, and in the off weeks we'll kind of talk about various other MMORPGs. Right now, New World has sort of been kind of what we're on because they're going to have a preview that will hopefully be streaming and some other things as well. But come join us in Discord. We chat all the time, so always wanting to hear more about people's opinions and thoughts, and we like to disagree. So join us. It's fun. We used to have this whole thing about pancake batter, and I really thought that's where you were going to go earlier, Diggs, when you started talking about baking. But Felix is no longer with us, so that's probably why that did not happen.
Pancake batter is about releasing, like, when is a release?
And I'm not going to, we're not going to get into that.
No, I'm saying, but that's a different trigger. Pancake batter is specifically about trying to critique an alpha as if it's a finished product.
I was about to say, here's something fun for anyone that actually watches this show or watches it later. Go find the very old Theory Forge where that was a very central topic. If you can point me to the timestamp in the video, I will talk to you about maybe if you're not into Alpha 2 or some other stage of Ashes of Creation, maybe we'll get you in if you're able to show me that. I will pay for it. So, that being said, everyone have an awesome week, and we'll be back next week. So, see ya.
Yeah, see you then, folks. Have a good one.